Hi folks, Mr. Long here. I'm going to do a screencast today about solving equations. And we're going to talk about BEDMAS and inverse operations and how you actually, how you decide how to solve and what the process is that you use. Okay, so this comes from a handout. This is from set A, question D, and then the other ones are from set B. So let's take a look at this this equation. 149 minus 2x equals 137. What we always do when we're reading for BEDMAS is we start with x and we look at what happens to x. So this is where we're going to have to rewrite this equation. So there's a 2 there and a minus sign there. So it actually means if I want to represent that properly, what it really means is 149 plus negative 2 times x, and that equals 137, right? So adding a negative is the same as subtracting, right? So when it says minus 2x, the way we have to interpret it is I'm multiplying by negative 2, so I'm multiplying by this negative 2, then I add 149. Okay, so if I look at it from a BEDMAS perspective, right, because this is the only way you can do it if you don't know what x is, the first operation is to multiply by negative 2, and then the second operation is to add 149. So then I need to figure out, well, what is the inverse of that? Inverse switches the order and the operation. I'll say that again. Inverse switches the order and the operation. So I'm going to switch the order here, and so the 149 plus 149 came second. That means the inverse, opposite operation, is minus 149, and that has to come first. And then what is the inverse or opposite of multiplying by negative 2? Well, again, it's about the operation, not the number. The number doesn't change, the operation does. Okay, so the number is negative 2. So we're going to divide by negative 2, and that's going to be our inverse. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to begin by minus 149. 137 minus 149 is negative 12. Okay, then I'm going to divide that by negative 2, and the answer then is going to be negative 2 goes into negative 12 6 times. Okay, folks, 6 times. When you're watching these screencasts, I invite you to press pause, go back, look it over, until you understand it, of course. But again, what's the big idea there? Is that you have to interpret minus 2x as adding negative 2x. That's the big idea there. Let's go down and try this one. So negative 32 plus 2x equals negative 26. So again, this is the tough thing here is that's an easy thing because you're multiplying x by positive 2. And then you're adding negative 32. Because remember, we start from x. So first thing we do is multiply by 2. It's a positive 2. The next thing I'm doing is adding negative 32. Well, adding negative 32 is the same as subtracting 32. Okay, adding negative 32 is no different than subtracting 32. So let's look at BEDMAS. I'll write it the b to the side this time. So the first thing I'm doing to x is multiplying by 2. The next thing I'm doing is I'm subtracting 32. I'm adding negative 32, but that's the same as subtracting. Inverse. Inverse is, so it's 1, 2, 2, 1. So that's add 32. The opposite of subtracting is adding. And then the opposite of multiplying is dividing. Divide by 2. Okay, so I'm going to minus 32. And so I'd have to type in negative 26 in my calculator, then minus 32. 20 and 30 is 50, so that's negative 58. 6 and 2 is 8. And then I need to divide that by negative 2. Or sorry, by positive 2. My apologies. And 2 goes into that 29 times. So x equals, oh folks, what mistake did I make? Look at that. Plus 32, and I subtracted 32. That's terrible. So let's go back and correct that. Okay, so negative 26 plus 32 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Okay. Let's try one more here. Again, this is from set B. Negative 107 minus 2x equals negative 115. Negative 107 plus negative 2 multiplied by x equals negative 115. Okay, so I have to interpret multiplying by that negative 2 as adding negative 2 multiplied by. So negative 107 minus 2x I interpret as adding negative 2 multiplied by x. Okay, so BEDMAS inverse. First operation is to multiply by negative 2, because I look at what happens to x. I always start with x. Then the next thing I'm going to do is, I'm adding, so I read away this way, I'm adding negative 107, because I read away from x. If I'm adding negative 107, that means I am subtracting 107. Now I do the inverse, 1, 2, 2, 1. What's the opposite of minusing 107? Adding 107. What's the opposite of multiplying by negative 2? Dividing by negative 2. Okay. And then I apply that to this negative 115. So I need to add 107. And that's going to be equal to negative 8. Negative 8, now I divide by negative 2. Negative 2 goes into negative 8 4 times. X equals 4. Okay, folks, so again, review these videos. The important thing here is that you're actually understanding what you're doing and that connection between BEDMAS. Like if you